for anybody out there, we've been the Kingdom Empowered Podcast.
Mm.
And as of this episode, we're changing the name. So Kingdom Empowered is still around. KingdomEmpowered.com is still around. We have a lot of, honestly, really, really exciting stuff there. Devotionals, courses, blogs. By the way, all of it is going to be free. Like the courses to all of it, it's going to be free. But what Corey and I were talking about, and I feel like this is stemmed from a couple of things, and we can get into that, of we don't necessarily know if calling ourselves Kingdom Empowered Podcast really
represents the conversations that we're having.
Yeah.
Because we say it a lot from the beginning. We've said it, that, we're not theologians. We're not necessarily experts on the text, not pastors in any way, not affiliated with a church or a specific thing.
Right.
But we are just like, this is how our conversation, like our relationship was built on these kind of like just being friends and then having conversations around God.
Right.
Like literally calling me like, you want to talk about God?
Right. Exactly.
And it's like kind of just, I think that what we know to be true is that that's not a question.
Right.
Or these aren't questions that are specific to just you and me.
Right.
These are questions that we would say ordinary people have.
Yes.
And I think that's whether you kind of ascribe to a specific denomination or faith or a part of a church or not. The scripture says that like a fool will look in his heart, will look out at creation and say there is no God. I think that all of us, whether we can identify it or not, have an innate desire, an innate sense of wonder about our Creator,
about
who He is, about God, why we're here, why these circumstances in our lives, in our world are happening. I think that's a question that these are questions a lot of people have.
Right.
And so even from this idea of saying like, it's not necessarily around like empowering the kingdom or kingdom empowered kind of thing. It's like, these are normal people questions. It's built into our DNA to wonder and have conversations about these things.
Right. I think what you were saying is very interesting, because I think even if you would say you're atheist or you have no beliefs, which is, you do have a belief
in itself, is its own form of religion. Yeah.
But I think that there's still questions around creation in general, because as far as I'm aware, all of the great physicists and astrophysicists and all these people, they track back to Big Bang Theory, but they don't know what happened before that. There's still something there, right? And there's always questions, and I think the big thing for us from the very beginning has been, we are ordinary people. We have questions. We have jobs. Like, we're not pastors. We're not theologians. We haven't done this deep dive into...
Unseminaried.
Right. We're unseminaried, which was also a name that was brought up. But we decided to go against it. But, and I think what's also key is that I know just from like even my friend circle and talking to other people, right, that other people have questions like this. And I hope that the desire for me would be that we are able to have these conversations, A, but B, we continue along the path of, we don't want to just agree to disagree with people. We want to continue digging. We want to ask more questions.
Learn. Yeah.
We want to keep going. And 3, I think it's this recognition that like, if we're asking these questions, then we know that people out there do too.
Right.
Right. And it's not just about us. And hopefully my goal would be to build a platform where we can get maybe names that you all out there know on this, where we could bring them onto the show, and we could even take questions from the email or the Instagram or whatever it is, and along with our own questions, and really deep dive into people who do consider themselves to be experts.
Yeah. I think we've already kind of started that.
Correct.
Like we were bringing people in that are pastors or authors, or people that just have different experiences than us.
Right.
And trying to learn from their experience. And I think we want the brand of this podcast to be accessible to people that are in that same spot.
Yes.
And we asked a lot over the course of how many months now? Almost 6 months that we've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
How many episodes? Almost 20 episodes.
I think this is
out.
either 20 or 21.
Yeah, I think we've been really intentional of asking for feedback
Mm-hmm.
and getting that. And I think that the change that we're making is kind of just reflective of how we have felt personally in the conversations we've had, but also the feedback that we've gotten from people that listen every week.
Right.
And our goal is just to accurately reflect the conversations and the content that we're creating.
Right.
So, ordinary believers,
Ordinary believers.
Norms.
We're here.
normie.
That's what we're calling it.
No,
Plebs. We go all the way back. No. And I think that to really get this going, right, is like Corey said, the very beginning of this, it was us talking and going, we have these conversations at 3 a.m. in a basement anyway. Let's record them for the world and let's put them out there. Which some of those conversations, there's no way we could ever record and put out to the world.
No.
But I think we're getting closer and closer. And I think that we just like to talk about what's going on in our lives, right? And what we are either celebrating and are super grateful for, or we're suffering through,
Yeah.
right? And all of those things just bring questions, which I think strengthens, our relationship, but it strengthens our relationship with God.
For sure.
Of what that looks like and how we dig into things and what we're looking at. And we could just dive into some questions.
Because we started with that even in that chat we had last week. And we were just kind of off the cuff. I think you and I were just talking, but like talking about the idea of like, have you ever had a quote unquote relationship with somebody where you felt like there wasn't the ability to question anything of why? And ultimately that I would say is not much of a relationship.
Or a very, very unhealthy one.
Right. It's still a relationship. It's just.
Right. It's just very, very unhealthy.
Right. Because then it's only one way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just being like that feels a little culty. That feels a little dictatory.
Dictation. That's like speech.
Like a dictatorship. Dictatorship.
Yes.
Where it's like, there's one person, they're talking at you, but you don't really have the ability. If you question that, you question. Sometimes I think when it's at its unhealthiest point, it's like if you question the leader, you're questioning God himself.
Right.
And
well, I think what's really interesting about that is like if we look at the Bible and we look at God and we look at everything we grew up with, right? God never leaves us, never abandons us. Like he's always pursuing us. Right? And so if we feel like we have this relationship with God where we can't question why, and we're talking about it being an unhealthy relationship, it's actually from our end, not from God's end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we project that
to
him.
Which is really interesting.
What we've grown up with has taught us to project that on him. So we have maybe an unhealthy view of the nature of God.
Right.
And we are in the process of redefining, relearning that relationship.
Which, like, you said the nature of God. And that just brings up
questions.
A whole Pandora's box. Right? Like, what is the nature of God? What would you say the nature of God is?